prospective listeners and viewers. Welcome to Perspectives with
Lisette.
and Martina. So we are back. This is our second installment on Growing Old in America. So if you have not watched the first video of this series, you should go back and watch that. We talk a little bit about our parents and how both of us have been caretakers, caregivers. Honestly, don't know if though we use those words interchangeably, but I don't know if caregiver and caretaker is
I
actually the
don't
same.
know.
That's for another day. It's another
That's
day.
that's
But
that's another episode.
another episode. But in that video, yes, we talk about having to be there for our parents, and really kind of get into some of the insurance and just how that impacts us as being two full-time working women and what that looks like. So it was a really good episode. So if you have not seen that, we will link to it and you should go back and watch it after you finish watching this video. That really helps us out. You go back and watch it, leave comments. We always say just be respectful. We love to hear from y'all. you know uh Leave us a thumbs up, but yeah, interact with us. We're like, we are getting better at that. We're trying to be better. We're interacting with y'all. So, but yes, welcome back if this is if you're coming back here, and just welcome if this is your first time here. So yes, as I mentioned, I'm Martina, and for this episode we wanted to spend a little time with y'all talking about what does growing old in America look like for us, and particularly we say me and Lisette, but we are also millennials and the Gen Zs that are coming after us. Retirement and growing old in America is very different, I think, than for us as it has been for those that came before us. And I think even for people of color, I know particularly, like, I know growing up in my family, retirement, it just because, we like, I want to say to a certain extent, retirement was like a thing that rich people do. It's not something that like my family did. Like, this is, both of my
Yeah.
parents ended up being injured on the job. So it was very, very different anyway. But just because of my socioeconomic status and where I originally come from, retirement just wasn't like a thing. It's just not
Mm.
something that you did. I don't know if it's that way with your family as well, or different members of your family, but it just wasn't even really a thing for me. So it's so interesting to say that, oh, it's changed, but it was never really that for me anyway.
Yeah.
But I think as a whole here in the United States, retirement and growing older has changed, as a whole. So let's say I'll turn it over to you to say anything you like at this moment.
Yeah. I think that the landscape for us is looks different just in general, just even just looking at the way, the US is right now and what to expect. And if we look at Social Security, will it be there or not be there, and all these, different conversations. But to sort of the point you were talking about, like what did retirement look like, or like the conversation, I don't think I ever really heard it as a talking point. It wasn't something that, was like, oh, it's for us, or it's, something that we're working towards. It wasn't something that was like, oh, we're saving towards retirement, or we're doing this for retirement. It was always like, well, it always kind of went back to like Social Security. If I'm trying to like remember, was like that's your retirement essentially, and whatever it was. And I think um when I think just of my parents, or just others are in the same boat, who came to this country and who had to learn sort of how things operated here, and going to like, you're even more behind because you don't really know how things operate, and you're already starting at a deficit per se, or like just behind. So I think it was just understood that you just weren't gonna catch up, and you were just gonna be the best or try the best, and and God's gonna provide a way. Like,
It's always God's gonna make a way. Won't he
God's
gonna
gonna
make
make
a
a
way?
way, and he's good, take care of things and everything like that. I think was, it probably is my retirement plan. God's gonna have to figure out a way.
Okay.
but I think that when you mentioned that, I think that's where like my mind went to of like, man, like I don't think I ever really had a conversation or heard a conversation around retirement or saving for retirement or planning for what's to come after you hit. I think at the time you had to be like, I think it was 65 was sort of the retirement, 65 or 67, where you can go full retirement. I know it's got,
I think it's, yeah, it's gone up to 67 now.
yeah. So there was a couple of years ago that a few years ago my dad retired, but and it was a forced retirement, which is a whole other conversation to be had around that. But I think let's get into sort of how we see growing old in America is for ourselves and maybe millennials as a whole. But I think I always go back to Social Security and the how unstable it is now, and sort of that we're we, the working individuals right now, are the ones funding the current payout for, Social Security. Like it's not something that is being, I'm not paying for my Social
Right.
Security. Like it's not going towards the future. It's like the now and maybe the near future, but it's definitely not for my retirement age. So that to me it's so fascinating to sort of see because you are sold Social Security as an important investment, as something that's necessary because you're paying into your future, into your future retirement. But you're like, but everything you hear is that like,
You're
yeah,
not.
millennials aren't gonna, they're not gonna get anything.
Right.
Like,
Like, yeah.
so then you're like, so then why continue? Like, why are we, what happened? Like it was set up. Clearly it was on at some point it was in step to be that, and then like what happened?
I hope so. That's very true because yeah, always, I think for as long as I can remember, have always heard that I'm paying for others' social security.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm sure ours probably haven't even be kicked in yet. I don't even know if ours are even being paid towards because again, I've heard that there won't be anything left by the time we get older. But that concept, and this is where people who are economists or health economists, things like that, I'm very interested in that because I don't know how actually all that works in terms of like why are we now paying for those who are 20, 30 years older than us? And again, those who are coming behind us supposed to pay for us. But like you said, that I guess got off kilter somewhere along the way. It was a
Or
line.
was it always that way and it was sold differently? Like I don't know.
Yeah,
Like
like we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. So I would love someone who is better informed about this, who could actually, comment or, connect with us because that is
yeah.
fascinating. I'm wondering, if it ever was aligned, what happened? How did we get so far behind? Because it's to me, it seems very redundant to be paying for people and you're not paying for yourself. But again, that's just my understanding because it doesn't make much sense to me, and I don't understand why there will not be enough for our generation to have social security. Like, what does that mean? Is it just mean that the United States economy is going to hell in a handbasket? Maybe so. I don't really no, I don't understand. So actually I would love to hear anyone's comment about that. Because it has always, yeah, I've definitely heard like, oh yeah, Social Security is going to be your retirement, but that we're not going
Mhm.
to have any left by the time it gets to us.
I was trying to do a quick Google search to see,
Okay,
but
Google, your friends.
there's just so many things.
I
I don't
bet
want
there is.
to
Oh my God.
I think I want to find an answer quickly, but we'll see what maybe next time we'll do some reading and
Yeah,
um
yeah, we know. Yeah,
do that.
dig a
But
little
if
bit on that.
you, listener, viewer, have some background information,
Yes.
please comment or send us a message on Instagram or comment on this video. But yeah, because I don't know, and I didn't even realize we were gonna go down this route with Social Security.
I had no idea either. Folks listen to people. If you've been watching us for a while, you know how this rolls. we're typically both of us are planners, but sometimes, we go and take our little adjacent, well, I almost said adjacent. What was the word?
A little detour.
A tangent, yeah, the scenic route. And sometimes we just get lost in the sauce too. And
Yes.
we got to get back on track. But I think that was a great thing. I mean, that's a great thing to be fascinated about.
Yeah.
It's Social Security, and my conspiracy mind is always like they don't want you to understand Social Security. Like, why should they understand it?
Yeah.
They people who are going to try to be funny. They meaning the government, the man,
Yes.
the billionaires who want everybody else to stay beneath them.
The one percenters, whatever you want to call the they.
Yes, whomever you refer, if the they for you is UFOs, then go ahead on, baby. That's you. That's your business. Okay, your therapist, and God. That's between y'all. But I think it is. Always say on here like these systems are working exactly as they're supposed to.
Yeah.
They're keeping everybody down. They're keeping everybody down who those in that they category want to keep down. It's working perfectly. It's working fine.
It really is.
Yeah, it really is.
But yeah, try to bring it back to where we started with, you know, millennial. We won't speak for all millennials. We'll speak for us too as millennials.
Yes.
Um, because then I don't want being like, you don't speak for us, or like, but I honestly, when I think about my retirement fund,
Mhm.
uh, and what's in it, like, I know I'm not on track to retire for retirement. Like, I am in no way, shape, or form on track for it. Uh, and before we got on, we were doing a little research. We were doing some, and I was like, I think I just had posed the question of like, millennials and retirement. Like that was sort of my search on it. And there was a lot of conversation or sort of a lot of articles that talked about, the millennial generation really kind of leaving college at a time where either we had the Great Recession in 2008, sort of the tech boom that kind of was happening in the early 2000s, and all these sort of things that created maybe some unstable situations in our
Mhm.
economy. Like I think I mentioned before, I graduated in 2008 from college, and I remember it just took taking forever to just find a job. Like I was doing, part-time here and part-time over there and things like that. And it wasn't until a couple of years later where I finally, was at a place and a job where I was like, okay, this is good. This is sort of the career and all of that. My education finally paid off to get here, right? And doing that. But these articles, the one thing that they pointed out was like, even with all of that, like, millennials were still kind of ahead in certain spaces. But the thing that was contributing to them not being on track for retirement was student loan debt. Um, and so Martia and I were just talking about that before we started recording of like why do we have so much student loan debt compared to maybe previous generations, or like why does it seem like we have more? Why does it seem like we're paying more, or all of these things? And and when I think of my own journey, and like it's definitely those unstable times where you might have had a good job, and then all of a sudden you don't have one, or it's down, there's downsizing, or there's pay cuts and all these things, and there was this whole time where you just were unstable and you just didn't really have steady income, or you might have had income but it wasn't like at a good pace, so you were just pushing your student loan debt down the line, and it just kept growing and growing, and all of that. So it's just interesting to see that I think in the three articles that I read, two of them mentioned student loan debt. And to be in the present and know that there were so many fights and conversations and push to say like, hey, we're gonna zero out people's debt, and so much pushback from our government, and so much pushback from really the Republican Party for the most part, to be like, no, like you can't do that, when every sort of statistic and study and everything was like, you actually can, like it's okay, it's not gonna like dismantle our economy, it's actually gonna like improve our economy. They're going to be able to like spend, money in other ways. But so much pushback. And yet it's one of the contributing factors as to why millennials and younger generations aren't going to be able to get ahead or be even just get back on track for retirement.
Yeah, I don't think there's no getting them back on track. I don't, because we were never on track. I don't
Yeah,
think we were ever on track to even
100%.
get towards the retirement. And again, whether it was a little bit before millennials or millennials really kind of came in, and because it sounded like what you're saying, because of the economy, it was just fucked. We just fucked from the start because it was just like kind of no way for us to really get ahead. Which is interesting because you said you during the recession of '08, I graduated college in 12 and undergrad. And it wasn't until I went to graduate school and graduated, really, I was able to start making a living for myself. Which I knew that when I was in high school and undergrad, that more schooling was going to come from me. And that was going to come from loans because my parents didn't have it. And I know people who work and pay for it at the same time. That didn't happen for me either. I did work at some point and was able to put some money towards it, like when I was in graduate school. But it was loans. And again, I'm not alone in that, but I feel, and I think I might have been talking about this before we started recording, is that for us millennials, at least, I don't know about the Gen Zs, but I think for us millennials, and especially us millennials of color, it's like college and university's always been preached. Like, you got to go to college. You got to go to
Yeah,
college. There's no other way to
yeah.
have a substantial good living for yourself. Um, and I think maybe in many ways, our parents, family members told us that because that seemed like the best thing. And I actually was talking to some friends recently. Here goes another tangent. And I was telling them that Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, I don't think he graduated high school or graduated college. I cannot remember. But then
One of those.
what? Say it again.
I said one of those. I don't remember
One
which
of
one.
those, yes. But then I have to remember Sam Walton was a white man from the South. It didn't really take that much. And again, people might say, oh, well, just because you're white and blah, blah, blah. Yes, understand white people have a struggle too. There are poor whites in the South, but you still have an up on poor blacks and poor Native Americans and poor Latinos that we don't have. You still have an up. So Sam Walton still have an up. And again, I don't know if he came from a semi-wealthy family or if he came from a family that was struggling all along, but they were able to give him that $100 that got him started, because that's what happened with the Vanderbilts. But anyway, these are people who are still white and they're men, so they're always going to be a step ahead regardless of their social economic standards or status. But yeah, I said that about Sam Walton, but then I had to think. I was like, yeah, he was a white man from the South. He already had the advantage of being ahead. Um, but again, I think you're going back to us millennials, the ones who grew up with our parents. Particularly, my parents did not go to university. I was the first one in my immediate family. That I had cousins and whatnot who had gone to undergrad, but I was the first one in my immediate family, and to get an undergrad and graduate degree. Granted, I had to take out loans about that. And looking back at that, it's really a shame now that students who are young and whose parents may not have another way to put their kids into school, because we're also dependent on academic scholarships, which is why you see so many kids of color playing sports, because that's an
Yeah.
area to shine. That's an area to shine. That's an area to get you some money to get into school, maybe get drafted, whatever that might look like for you. Um, and people often have things like negative connection with those things, but oftentimes a lot of those kids are really depending on those scholarships. And that's what makes it like so competitive, because they need that money to get to school and to have an adequate life to help support their families. Um, and again, yeah, to get us back on track, essentially, the loans have fucked us up. The student loans have fucked us up, and the economy has not been strong for us around that 08, 09 era when the recession was happening, when a number of us millennials were graduating high school or graduating college. And it's a lot of, false hope
Mm.
that, again, I think our families, for lack of a better word, didn't necessarily know any better. Some of the, I would say my parents, they didn't know. And when I was applying to school, I did all my own research because, like I said, I wanted to get the hell out of Mississippi. So my parents never had to tell me to study. They never had
Yeah.
to tell me to, like, oh, it's time to apply for colleges. I didn't have mom and dad on my ass with that. And I know friends now and people older than me who are on their kids' ass about, okay, you've been very fortunate. You've been very blessed. Your ass is going to college. I am going to be doing this for you. I didn't have that, but I didn't need that. I think,
Yeah.
if anything, it would have been great if my parents and I knew more about the financial implementation, not implementation. What am I trying to say? What am I trying to
I
say?
know. No,
Implication,
it's
implication,
implication.
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 Yes, that's what a master's degree gets you. You can't pronounce words. Okay. So if anything, it would have been nice to know the financial ramifications of that when I was going from high school into college. But again, I wanted to, I always had higher hopes for myself. And but yeah,
Yeah.
essentially to say that the loans have really messed us up. And I think generations that came before us well, A, they don't have much sympathy for us. I think they don't really have much sympathy for us millennials,
Oh.
which is always an intergenerational kind of rivalry just among boomers and the Gen Xers, and us and the Gen Zs is always kind of a thing going on about who had it
Mm.
better and blah blah blah. We're all fucked in many ways, but okay. But yeah, we seem to be a misunderstood, us millennials in particularly, because
Yeah.
they think that we're spoiled and we don't want to work, and we've been given a lot of advantages. But I'll step back and challenge that in a way. What advantages?
Mm.
Really, I would be interested to know. And again, I'm not trying to take us on another tangent. This may be another episode or another series, but what advantages? Like, I know there are people that have come before us, and a lot of
Mm.
people have paved the way. People of color, women of color, for both you and I. Absolutely. But as far as, like, I hear that we complain a lot. We don't want to do anything. When really we're just saying we don't want to work our bones off.
Yeah.
Because retirement for what? Is we're saying we don't have a retirement. And I think that's why millennials are so on this kick of just living in the here and now, because our debt, our student loan debt that our government didn't require, didn't allow any sort of financial literacy around, and just allowed a bunch of teenagers to take out thousands of dollars of loans,
Mm.
has crippled us. And at that point, like I said, I didn't see it when I was that age, and my parents wanted me to have the best education. Again, I think a lot of families are that way. But yeah, we're paying for it now, and we're going to continue to pay for it. So this whole idea of retirement is retirement when? I probably won't retire to 70. If then, okay, because it's like, I'm fortunate that I do have a 401k. I have a Roth, but those are things I didn't grow up knowing about. I had to seek out that information. And again, this student loan debt, this is gonna be with me for a while. That's all I'm gonna say. Turn it back over to you.
So I just want to circle back on Sam Walton because I was curious to find out what he hadn't graduated, but it says here that he actually graduated high school and college.
Oh, well, look at that. Thank you, Google.
Yeah, because but then it says here that he actually did. So people are
There you
making
go.
up
Yeah, I had
stuff.
always heard that he didn't. So there we go. Thank you, Google, about
You
it.
know what's interesting? I'm gonna go on a tangent here. What's interesting is that for some reason, for particularly white men, they always want to make like this really like struggle story of like and like I don't know, like make it seem like they had much harder
Such a
like
hard time. Maybe
yeah.
a hard time, and that's okay, because I don't feel like you're trying to relate, because you don't care
Yeah.
about people really, who
But I'm
look
like,
like
you
you.
know,
Like, you don't care. So I don't understand. Yeah, it's always they trying to. oh, well, I didn't have this, that, and another. You may not, but look at what all you did have. Okay.
But
Yeah, I don't
anyway,
get that.
I don't want because because I've heard that it's been said for like other individuals and things like that, and then I'm like,
Right.
but they actually did graduate. They did, so it's interesting because it's not the first time that I've gone and looked, and I'm like, huh, well, who's putting this information out there that is not true, or it's just wanting to like embellish or make it seem like it was harder than
They
it.
part of the struggle, and it's not.
Yeah.
But they say that, but like, I mean, look at Elizabeth Holmes, Bill Gates. They never
Hmm.
graduated from university, but look where they were at school. What, like Elizabeth
Yeah.
Holmes at Stanford. I can't
Yeah.
remember where Bill Gates was, and he dropped out.
Yeah. I remember.
Okay, that's
So
not the same.
anyway, I just wanted to circle back on that, and make sure just in case somebody wants to, fact check us, please always fact check us. We're
Yes, I
open to
say,
that.
listen, I am not an economist. I'm not an expert on the Walton family, obviously, but Google was. Thank you, Google. Sponsor us. Okay, that's a different topic. Here we go.
But I had a whole thought in my head, and now it's like
I
floating away.
lost you with the Google. I was trying to help. Retirement, millennials, OTs,
Um,
pensions. We had
I'm
talked about that before we started recording.
I'm gonna figure out where I'm gonna go from here. But I think what's interesting, well, what you were talking about is, and you mentioned this, and we've talked about this before, is how much and I remember what it is, so hopefully I'm gonna finish this thought and then hopefully remember. Um Interesting how much pushing college on millennials, and then even hearing younger generations, so like Gen Z and younger, saying like, college isn't for me, like college is not the be all end all, because they've seen what the millennial generation has gone through and how getting a bachelor's degree is no longer like useful. Like now you have to go for more schooling, you have to go get, a master's, and even a master's now it's not
That
even
ain't shit either.
enough.
Right.
Not like it's PhD. So it's like the the end goal just keeps getting further and further away. And your debt just keeps getting higher and higher, because once you start getting into, you that went for masters and people that go for PhDs, the funding for that, like the, scholarships and all of that support, becomes less and less,
Yeah.
or a lot more exclusive to be able to get it, and you're taking on more loans and you're borrowing more money,
Right.
um, and then you end up being in debt for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the interesting part of, the millennial generation, because, I tell, younger generations, like, look, college isn't for everyone.
Mhm.
Like, don't make it your end goal.
Right.
Like, if it's for you, great. If it's necessary for the career that you want to have, and
Absolutely.
you feel like that is where you want to go, then explore it. I would have loved to have taken a year off before making the decision of going to college. I just never, it was never talked about. It was never an option. It
Right.
was
It
never
wasn't an option.
like, I didn't even know it could be an option. Like there were ways to make it an option, but it was like nope, graduate and straight into college. I was like, I wish I'd taken a year. I wish I had figured out exactly what I really wanted to do, or where it could, instead of just kind of navigating and landing eventually where I landed. But it would have been nice, I think, and so I just, will share that experience with younger generations, who may or may not have someone that's navigated, like you mentioned, navigated the college application and all of that, because that is a whole other uh hurdle to get past, and understanding what FAFSA is, and understanding the application process for each of the colleges, and
You
the
have to pay for
cost
those
that
applications.
comes with it, and not having, I was fortunate enough that I had older siblings who was somebody that went through that and was able to help navigate it a little better. But I had friends who didn't and had to figure it out. And our school counselors weren't the most helpful. Um, if you weren't um what was deemed, important enough, or kind of like you weren't really going for one of those, like, whether it's an Ivy League college or something, like there were, school counselors or college school counselors had their favorites, or who they were going to give more attention to than others. And that's a whole other conversation about our educational system in the United States. um but it's just it's it's just fascinating that you know you and I had similar paths or
Yeah.
similar struggles and things. And it's just fascinating to know there's so many of us, particularly uh, people of color, who have so many similar stories and similar experiences through this system and through these different avenues that we took, but we all just kind of experience the same things at the end of the day. And one of the things that you touched on as well was sort of the uh generational differences and sort of the criticism that millennials get. Because we ruin so many of the things. We ruin the housing market um because we are buying our Starbucks and avocado toasts.
Yes,
Uh,
that makes so much sense.
that's
Right.
that we ruin that, and all those things, when in reality um the generations before us ruined all of those things for us, and made it harder. And I think it's sort of interesting to see that the blame being pushed to the next generation, the generation coming up. And I see millennials being like, no, it was the generations that came before us that are doing that, so we're not gonna go and blame Gen Z
Like, but
for
the Gen Z's or anything. Mm-mm.
um just their fashion choices. They're bringing back some 90s fashion choices, but
Oh, the fashion choices, those need to stay dead where they were.
but but again, that's a
Right.
different
That's a different
episode.
conversation. Yes.
Different series. But it's just, it's interesting because I've been in conversations where people are like, these younger generations, or these generations, that are coming, you know, after us, just don't want to work. They don't have work ethic. I will put extra hours, I'll go out of my way, and I'll do this, and I'll stay longer, and I'll work, through the weekends and all these things. And I sit here being, why? Like, why would you do all that when you're not getting paid more?
Mhm.
Um, you're not moving up, maybe. But then, a lot, in the United States, you're most of these states are at will employers, so, and they can let you go whenever. Um, and it's like, so why are you criticizing these, younger generations for knowing their worth,
Yeah.
for wanting better for not just themselves, but those that are coming behind us, and for actually having work-life balance and sort of understanding that your life shouldn't revolve around work. Like that, work should move around your life. Work should be the thing that's flexible, because life is going to happen. Emergencies are going to come up, things are going to come up in your life. And sometimes the flexibility just doesn't exist in real life, in the real world. The flexibility should come from your work. Like that should be the place that's understanding and sort of provides that flexibility. um and I think it's interesting to see these older generations just chalk it up to like not having work ethic, when I think millennials and Gen Zs have, I think, some of the best work ethic and understanding of what it really means to be in the workforce, and understanding the equity, understanding the fairness and the right thing when it comes to um employees. And I've gotten into more supervisor manager role, and tried to like be the way that be the manager that I would want to have had and to be and to like be that way. But it's interesting because those above me might be an older generation and have different expectations or have a different expectation of what ethic is, and it's fascinating. It's just fascinating overall, the conversations I've been a part of, and the understanding of
Yeah.
what I expect, but others expect from uh you know the individuals. And it's like, man, like I don't see eye to eye with you on that at all. And I'm like, but we talk about this, you still have to operate in the systems and in the way things are, and you have to figure out how to make it work. But it's interesting because, again, I think millennials and Gen Z and the generation coming behind us are out here just trying to do the right thing and trying to do a thing that's fair, and really find that work-life balance and understanding that life is life. Work is a part of it, and you're going to make work fit into your life versus you're going to make your life fit into work. That's all I got.
That was great. My thing is that the generations that came before us. I'm like, why are you so bothered by us? We are
They
not
are.
impacting you. You have impacted us.
Yes.
Like, talk about that. But they do love to be very critical about us. And I'm like, if you don't like what we got to say, then walk away. Close your. I don't know what to tell you. You're older than me, so you figure it out. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I will. Every time I travel outside the country, things I always hear from other people is about the guns and about how Americans work themselves to the bone.
Oh yeah.
I don't understand either, but we're here to talk about work yourself to the bones today.
Yes.
Um, and that is what the older generations, they just work themselves to the bone. They work themselves to they ain't got nothing left. People have left this world earlier than they should have because they've worked and worked and worked. And
Yep.
I'm not doing it. I am not doing it. Between the 9 and the 5 or the 8 and the 4, whatever my schedule is, well, under special circumstances, I do work in the industry where sometimes you do have to attend certain events or
Yeah.
travel, or you're traveling for certain things or you're working on projects. Yes, absolutely, we all got to roll up our sleeves. But that's not the standard for me. I'll work hard from that 9 to 5 and that's it. I don't want to work outside of that, and I think that's fine. And that's completely okay because you're working and working and working and working for
Mhm.
what? Always, for what? You're working, you're like, and again, just goes, I think, yes, us millennials, I think we are in a particular spot with that because the Gen Zs ain't doing that. They out here making their own way and finding
Yeah.
money and hustling their way, which I think we could learn a lot from that.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm not critical of the Gen Zs. I think they are finding their way in the midst of all the shit that they've seen all the other generations go through, and they just
Yep.
not move forward. And I do applaud them for that, because I think millennials, we probably have allowed ourselves to be kind of beaten down in a way
Yeah.
because we do have a lot of debt. As we know, most of us can't even afford a house. We can't even afford a car. And I think it's gotten to a point where most of us we have probably decided that's just not for us anyway. We're, I think, living for each day. And, which for me as a planner can be difficult because I'm a Capricorn and we like to plan things. But also, I have gotten to a point. I was just telling some coworkers of mine who are older than me. They are the generation before me, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not working myself to a bone. I'm in my 30s and I'm tired. I'm tired, and I got so much more to go before I can retire. Okay, so much more to go, and I'm tired.
Yeah.
I've been working in whatever capacity since like junior high to try to get to where I am today. And I've made it. In that instance, I've made it. But there's still so much more to go. Um, and it's just, I think us millennials and Gen Zs, I think particular millennials, we've been sold this false dream of college. We've worked
Mhm.
and we don't have a lot to show for it. And this goes beyond like having your avocado toast at Starbucks. We just don't have anything to show for it. And so I think if some of that is just like, you know what, we just gonna live life playing a little bit, that's cool. But I think really just enjoy your life, because getting to 70 is not promised. Even though I know people are living longer, which that might
Yeah.
be one of the next year. People are living longer.
Yeah.
But tomorrow's not promised. And yeah, I think us millennials are learning to deal with that. And we've had to deal with it the best way we know how. And
Yeah.
so I leave us with that.
I love everything you said. I think, when I think about sort of the criticisms that come particularly with millennials, and it's really around, our worth, like I mentioned, but also like, we don't want the generations coming after us to have to struggle the same way. And it's so interesting because the older generations are like, well, if we went through it, you should go through it too.
Work yourself to death.
And I'm like, but why? Like, shouldn't we want it to be easier and better? Like, isn't it the same? Like, our parents want better things for us. So why shouldn't we want better things for the
Right.
generations coming after? Like, that's what I would want. Like, that's what I want. We're like, look, if I can make our work life easier, if I can make it better, maybe easier is not the right word, but better, like great. Like, yes. Are there days where we're gonna have to like put in the extra time? We're gonna have to work on a weekend, stay later, do an event, all that. Of course, like that's part of the work, but it shouldn't be the expectation
Exactly.
that we should be at everything and show up. And I think that's the interesting part, because one of the things that I've seen more and more is not not looking for the next promotion. Like
Mm.
I'm not working for the next I'm not going for that title, I should say. I'm going for the paycheck.
Yep.
Like
Ding.
like it's the paycheck, it's not the title. It's not like, and I think other generations, and I don't know, but it looked or seems like it's the title that you're going for. It's that recognition. It's the like acknowledgement that, oh my God, I've done this. I'm getting the spotlight. And it's like millennials and others are like, nah, I don't need the spotlight. You know what I do need? I
Spotlight.
need a higher paycheck.
That's what I
Like
need. I don't give a shit
I
about a
need,
spotlight.
it's not the recognition. It's not, I'm not out, I don't need my name. I don't need my face. I don't need all of this, to make me want to stay. If you want me to stay, pay me. Pay
Right.
me what I deserve. Pay me what the current inflation is, at like all these things. And that's been such an interesting thing to see and be conversations of, because to what you mentioned, it's like gotta work yourself to the bone to just get that little gold
Right.
star,
Right.
and it's like a lot of millennials and younger are like, I don't need the gold star, I don't need the limelight, I can get that somewhere else.
Right.
Like I can go viral on TikTok. Like there's so many
Right.
other ways now to fulfill that, or like, and like you mentioned, just other ways to make more money. That it's like I don't need to work myself to the bone, because there's just so many other ways, and and there's so many, people who are like, hey, you need multiple streams of income and all these things, and you do, and it's like, but yeah, I think that's the one thing I definitely hear a lot is um not wanting to do more or be there, or like put yourself out there. You have to shine, you have to, and it's like, but I really don't, like we really don't need all of that. Like I want to go do my job, do it well,
And go home.
and go home. And I think that's a lot of millennials and younger. That's what we want. I was like, I mean, you and I have had conversations like, look, we're gonna do the best that we can. We're, at the time that you want us to do it. And there are moments where, yes, we're gonna go above and beyond and do all those things as needed, as required for me to accomplish the work that I'm supposed to do. Um, but I'm also not going to um exert myself or kill myself. There's people who just, who get sick and are showing up at the office or, going to work or just showing up whatever because they're like, this is the work ethic. I gotta show up. I just gotta push through. And I was like, no, because life you only have one. I mean, I remember when YOLO was the
Oh,
thing,
YOLO,
you
yeah.
only live once. I mean, it really is true. Like you only have one life. So what are you gonna do with it? Like, are you gonna prioritize um other people's money or are you gonna prioritize your
You and your
you
health.
and your health and all that?
Right.
I'm like, and I think there are, I think, industries and companies that are starting to understand that
Yeah.
and be like, okay, how do we meet people where they are, where they want to be? How do we ensure that there is that balance between that? Um, but yeah, but if you work in a place where they're allowing you to have that balance and encourage that balance and are let us know, share your experiences. Like I'm fortunate that I'm in a place where there is that encouragement. There is that desire to bring that balance around it. And I think it's just some generations just have a harder time adjusting or understanding that from a generational perspective. But I'm all for balance because, you know,
Say, I would say I work at a place that encourages that too, but a part of me is like, do they really? I don't know. I feel like they say,
and
like,
I think that's an interesting thing, right? Like, because the
mm,
company organization wherever you work might tote that, but is
they don't live that. I think a lot of
I
yes,
think that the actual individuals, whether it's leadership, whoever it is, may not live it because they're like that's not their norm.
right,
And
right.
I'm like, if it's not your norm, that's cool. Do you just don't impose that?
For me, because I'm gonna have my balance. Yeah.
So it's just fascinating. I mean, I think we're going on a different tangent, but
That'll be another. That's another episode. But yes, I just had to throw that out there. But
yeah.
yeah, I think this has been a good video. This is good. We never. Sometimes it's like I said, we plan and plan, but you never know how
Yes.
the conversation is going to turn. I really have enjoyed this
This
conversation
has
with
been a
you.
good one.
Yeah, and I hope people have enjoyed listening
Yes.
and seeing our face as well. And yeah, if you have comments, like I said, we would love to like continue this conversation with people, or like we said, people who are experts in this field, who study this, economists, other ists that I may not know
Yes.
that exist. We welcome your feedback and comments. So good episode.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll be back and with some more tangents and some more topics, but always bringing it back to the original topic and conversation. But thank you again. We appreciate you all joining us, and we will see or talk to you next time.